It was always about the kitchen. For me, anyway. Sarah, my wife, my beautiful, maddening Sarah, she dreamed of walk-in closets and sprawling master baths. Me? I just wanted space. Space to breathe, space to create, space to lose myself in the rhythm of the knife on the cutting board, the sizzle in the pan. We found it 2 years ago. A sprawling Victorian on the edge of town bathed in the late afternoon sun. Sarah fell in love with the stained glass windows and the wraparound porch. I fell in love with the bones of the kitchen, big, airy, with a butcher block island just begging to be worn down with use. We poured our savings into it. Joint account, 50-50. Sarah took the reins on decorating. The living room blossomed into a haven of soft textures and calming colors. The bedroom became a sanctuary of plush carpets and ambient lighting. I didn't care. I trusted her taste. She was a designer after all, a professional. I just wanted my kitchen. And for a while, it was perfect. A haven. I spent hours in there experimenting with new recipes, perfecting old favorites. Sarah would often sit at the island, sipping wine, watching me work. Compliments flowed as easily as the olive oil from the bottle. Life felt good, settle, complete. Then, a few months ago, the creeping started. A whisper at first. The kitchen feels a little stark, don't you think, Mark? Stark? It was functional, efficient, everything in its place. But Sarah saw it differently. She saw a blank canvas, a space begging to be accessorized. The first intruder was a ceramic hen, perched precariously on the windowsill. Then came the baskets filled with fake fruit, gleaming under the fluorescent light. Then, the real onslaught began. Every day felt like a landmine. I'd come home from a grueling day, ready to unwind with a simmering pot of something comforting, only to find another trinket, another piece of decor, strategically placed to disrupt my carefully curated workspace. Wooden blocks proclaiming saccharine sentiments, like home sweet home, crowded the counter. A wine rack, stood sentinel in the corner, mocking my teetotaling existence. Elaborate vinaigrette decanters filled with shimmering, inedible liquid lined the shelves. They seemed to be breeding. Sarah defended her choices with a disarming smile. It just needs a little personality, honey. Don't you think? Personality? My kitchen didn't need personality. It needed space. It needed function. I tried to be reasonable. I tried to explain calmly and rationally that those decorative plates she'd arranged on the cabinet shelves were blocking the actual dishes. That I needed access to my knives, not a collection of ceramic squirrels. But Sarah just blinked her big hazel eyes and said, "Oh, Mark, you're such a minimalist. Lighten up. It's just pretty. That word echoed in my head, a constant, grating reminder that she didn't understand. She didn't understand the sacredness of that space, the flow, the rhythm. It wasn't a showcase for pretty things. It was the engine of our home. It was where I poured my heart, my energy, my love, into something tangible, something nourishing. The tipping point came when I discovered she'd relegated the toaster oven, my trusty, thrice daily companion, to the dark abyss beneath the counter. And my butcher block, my beloved, seasoned 20x28 behemoth, was now perched precariously atop the refrigerator, accessible only with a stepladder and a death wish. In its place, a goddamn tea set. 4 delicate cups and saucers arranged on a silver serving tray, complete with a teapot that probably cost more than my entire knife collection. Like we were hosting high tea. We never hosted anything. We were homebodies. That's when I exploded. Not in a shout and scream kind of way. More of a slow, simmering rage that bubbled up from the depths of my soul. "Sarah," I said, my voice tight with suppressed anger. "What the hell is this?" She looked at me, her eyes wide and innocent. "What? Don't you like it?" I thought it looked so inviting. Inviting? It looked like a staged set from a magazine spread. It looked like a deliberate act of sabotage. "Sarah, I need to use this kitchen," I said, fighting to keep my voice even. I cook every meal. I need my tools accessible. Where am I supposed to put my butcher block? Where am I supposed to work?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, you can move things around. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal? I have to rearrange the entire counter every time I want to chop an onion." "Sarah, that's insane." She started to cry. Of course, she started to cry. It was her go-to move. Tears as a shield, a weapon, a way to silence any dissent. "You don't get to just decide what's what, Mark," she sobbed. "It's our house. We agreed to decorate it together. And I let you decorate everything else. This is the only space I care about. Can't you understand that?" She didn't. She couldn't. She just kept crying, repeating the same tired phrases. "It's not fair. You're being selfish. You never listen to me." I walked away. What else could I do? Logic was useless. Reason was futile. She was trapped in her own little world of aesthetics. And I was standing outside, banging on the door, begging to be let in. We tried to talk about it again later that night. And the next day, and the day after that, each conversation ended the same way, with Sarah in tears, accusing me of being controlling, insensitive, and a whole host of other things that made me feel like the villain in our story. I never yelled. I never raised my voice. I just stood my ground, firm in my conviction that a kitchen should be functional, not a showroom. But she refused to budge. She refused to accept that I valued practicality over cuteness. And so the kitchen remained a battleground. A silent, simmering conflict that threatened to consume us both. 2 months! 2 months since I'd cooked a proper meal in our kitchen. 2 months of cold shoulders, strained silences, and a growing sense of resentment that gnawed at my soul. I'd resorted to a survival strategy. Mass production. I'd spend a few hours on the weekend, preparing a week's worth of food in bulk. Rice, potatoes, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, bags of salad, frozen soup. I'd portion it all out into containers and stack them neatly in the fridge, ready to grab and go. Efficient, practical, soul-crushingly lonely. Sarah was welcome to it, of course, but she didn't like leftovers. She craved the novelty, the excitement of takeout. So she ate her processed garbage. Fast food, fried this, sugary that. The kind of stuff I used to make for her, from scratch, with love. Now she got it from a drive-through window, wrapped in paper, swimming in grease. And slowly, subtly, I watched her change. Her energy flagged. Her skin lost its glow. She started complaining about headaches, about fatigue. She was gaining weight. I wanted to say something. I wanted to tell her that she was poisoning herself, that she deserved better. But the words caught in my throat. I was afraid. Afraid of another fight, another round of tears, another accusation of being controlling. So I stayed silent. I watched, and I waited. It finally hit her. I don't know when or how, but one evening she came home, her face pale, her eyes haunted. She walked straight to the bathroom, and I heard her vomiting. When she finally came out, she looked at me, really looked at me, past the anger, past the resentment, past all the walls she'd built. "I hate this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I hate feeling like this. I hate eating this crap." "Then stop," I said, my voice rough with emotion. "I can't," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't know how." That's when I saw it. The vulnerability, the desperation, the fear. It wasn't about the kitchen anymore. It wasn't about decor or personality. It was about control. About feeling like she had a say in our lives, in our home. And somewhere along the line, she'd lost it. That night, we tried to talk again. It started like all the other conversations. Accusations. defensiveness, tears. But this time, something was different. This time, I didn't back down. I didn't apologize for wanting a functional kitchen. I didn't try to appease her with empty promises. I just laid it all out on the table. The frustration, the loneliness, the fear that we were drifting apart. "Sarah," I said, my voice raw with emotion, "I love you, but I can't keep living like this. I can't keep watching you hurt yourself. If this kitchen is so important to you, if it's worth sacrificing our health, our happiness, then fine. Have it your way. But if you want me to cook for you again, if you want us to be a team again, then let me have the kitchen. Let me make it a space where I can create, where I can nourish you. Please." The words hung in the air, heavy and thick with unspoken emotions. She stared at me, her eyes searching my face. I braced myself for the tears, for the accusations, for the inevitable retreat. But they didn't come. Instead, she just started to cry. Real tears. Tears of pain, of regret, of something that felt a lot like understanding. "You're blackmailing me," she sobbed, her voice thick with emotion. "You're blackmailing my health to win an argument." Maybe I was. Maybe I was being manipulative. But I didn't care. I was desperate. I was fighting for our marriage, for our future. "Maybe I am," I said, my voice unwavering. "But you're blackmailing my passion, my happiness, my ability to care for you. What's the difference?" She didn't answer. She just cried harder. We were both exhausted. It was late. We had to get up for work. The conversation was dead. I left for work the next morning with a heavy heart. The fight hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I felt a sense of dread I didn't know I was capable of. I was in the dark about where Sarah stood, and the uncertainty was crippling. I knew this could be the thing that broke us. I knew that I had put everything on the line, and if she wasn't willing to give, all the love we had built for each other over the years may not be enough to save us. My job is flexible. I do consulting, work from home most days. But some days I have to head to a job site before dawn. That morning was one of those days. Grabbing paperwork before the actual workers arrived, I headed home in a daze. My head was still spinning with thoughts about Sarah and the kitchen and where we were going as a couple. As soon as I pulled up to the house, I knew something was wrong. The front door was slightly ajar. That was not normal. We were extremely cautious about security. Had someone broken in? My heart began to pound in my chest as I quickly pulled into the driveway, killing the engine and leaping out of the car. "Sarah!" I yelled as I crossed the lawn, running to the door. "Sarah!" I burst through the door, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The house was silent, too silent. "Sarah!" I yelled again, my voice cracking. I moved cautiously through the house, checking each room. The living room was empty. The bedroom was empty. My heart was in my throat. Then I heard it. A faint sob coming from the kitchen. I rushed to the kitchen, my breath catching in my throat. And what I saw there stopped me dead in my tracks. Sarah was sitting on the floor, surrounded by garbage. Not just any garbage. The ceramic hen, the fake fruit, the wooden blocks with their saccharine sayings, the wine rack, the vinaigrette decanters. All of it. Smashed. Broken. Scattered across the floor like the ruins of a forgotten civilization. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, her eyes bloodshot. She was holding a small wooden squirrel in her hands, its head broken off. "I did it," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I broke it all. Every last piece." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at her, at the wreckage that surrounded her. Then, slowly, I knelt down beside her. I took the broken squirrel from her hands and set it on the floor. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. She started to sob, her body shaking with the force of her emotions. "I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice muffled against my chest. "I'm so sorry. I was being stupid. I was being selfish." I held her tighter, "It's okay," I whispered. "It's okay." It's over now. The next few days were a blur. We cleaned up the kitchen together. We swept up the broken pieces. We wiped down the counters. We scrubbed the floor. With every piece of trash that we hauled to the bin, a weight lifted from our shoulders. The tension in the house began to dissipate, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. I asked Sarah what she wanted to do with the kitchen. Should we repaint? Should we get new appliances? She just shook her head. "I don't care," she said. "I just want it to be yours. I want you to be happy." So I took the reins. I reorganized the cabinets. I put the toaster oven back on the counter. I hauled my butcher block down from the top of the refrigerator and set it back in its rightful place. I sharpened my knives. I polished my pans. I restocked the pantry with ingredients. Slowly, carefully, I began to rebuild my kitchen, and with it, I began to rebuild our marriage. The first meal I cooked in our newly reclaimed kitchen was simple: spaghetti carbonara. It was one of Sarah's favorites. I worked slowly, deliberately, savoring every moment. The feel of the knife in my hand, the sizzle of the pancetta in the pan, the aroma of garlic and parmesan filling the air. Sarah sat at the island watching me. She didn't say anything. She just smiled. When the pasta was ready, I plated it and handed her a fork. She took a bite, her eyes closing in pleasure. "This is amazing," she said, her voice soft. "It's just carbonara," I said, shrugging. "No," she said, shaking her head. "It's more than that. It's us." We ate in silence, savoring the moment. The kitchen felt warm, inviting, alive. It felt like home. After dinner, we did the dishes together. Sarah washed, I dried. We talked. We laughed. We shared our fears, our hopes, our dreams. As I looked at her, standing there beside me, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face flushed with warmth, I knew that we were going to be okay. We had weathered the storm. We had faced our demons. And we had come out stronger on the other side. The kitchen isn't perfect. There are still a few empty spaces on the shelves, a few bare spots on the walls. But it's ours. It's a space where I can create, where I can nourish, where I can connect with the woman I love. And that's all that matters. Sarah still buys the occasional trinket, a small vase here, a decorative bowl there, but she always asks my opinion first. And she always respects my space. We've learned to communicate, to compromise, to listen to each other's needs. Our marriage isn't perfect. We still have our disagreements. We still have our challenges, but we face them together, as a team, because we know that love isn't about perfection. It's about acceptance. It's about forgiveness. It's about finding a way to make it work even when things get tough. And sometimes it's about letting go of the decorative plates and embracing the messy, imperfect beauty of a life lived together. The kitchen stands as a reminder of that. A reminder of the battle we fought, the sacrifices we made, and the love that ultimately prevailed. And every time I step into that space, every time I pick up my knife, every time I hear the sizzle of food in the pan, I am grateful. Grateful for Sarah, grateful for our home, and grateful for the simple, everyday magic of a kitchen where love is always on the menu. Time passes. Not perfectly, not seamlessly, but it passes. The ceramic hen is long gone, pulverized into dust and memories. But the scar of its presence, the memory of the fight, still lingers, a faint ache in the otherwise healthy tissue of our marriage. We're both aware of it, this phantom limb of resentment. We navigate around it, careful not to bump against the sharp edges of what almost was. Sarah's eating habits have improved dramatically. The drive-thru is a distant, shameful memory. She's even started experimenting in the kitchen herself, tentative, awkward, but genuinely eager. Her first attempt at a soufflé was a spectacular, albeit delicious, collapse. We laughed until our sides ached, the shared disaster somehow healing, somehow solidifying our bond. But the kitchen remains, fundamentally, my domain. It's where I unwind after a particularly stressful day juggling consulting calls and client demands. The rhythmic chopping, the methodical stirring, the satisfying transformation of raw ingredients into something nourishing and beautiful. It's my therapy. I notice Sarah watching me more these days. Not in the critical, appraising way she used to, but with a quiet admiration, a sense of wonder. She'll perch on a stool at the island, nursing a glass of iced tea, just observing. Sometimes she'll ask questions, genuine, curious questions about the techniques I'm using, the flavors I'm layering. It's progress. Slow, incremental progress, but progress nonetheless. We're learning to see each other, truly see each other, beyond the roles we've assigned ourselves. I'm not just the chef, the provider. She's not just the decorator, the esthetician. We're two flawed, complex individuals trying to build a life together, one meal at a time. Then, Amelia arrived, Sarah's younger sister, newly divorced, utterly heartbroken, and in desperate need of a place to land. I'd only met Amelia a handful of times before. She was always a whirlwind of nervous energy, a constant chatterbox who seemed to fill every room she entered with an almost frantic optimism. Now, the optimism was gone, replaced by a dull, haunted look in her eyes. Sarah, of course, couldn't say no. Amelia was family, and family, Sarah always said, came first. So, Amelia moved in, with a suitcase full of clothes, a box full of shattered dreams, and a palpable air of misery that hung over the house like a persistent fog. Initially, I tried to be welcoming. I made extra food, offered her a sympathetic ear, even attempted a few light-hearted jokes. But Amelia seemed immune to my efforts. She mostly stayed in her room, emerging only to grab a bite to eat, or to use the bathroom. She avoided eye contact, mumbled monosyllabic responses to our questions, and generally acted like we were intruding on her grief. I understood she was hurting. Divorce is a messy, devastating thing, but her sadness felt contagious. It seeped into every corner of the house, poisoning the atmosphere, reviving the dormant anxieties that I thought we'd finally conquered. The kitchen became my sanctuary once more, a place to escape the oppressive weight of Amelia's grief, the strained silences, the palpable tension that crackled in the air. I started experimenting with more elaborate dishes, complex recipes that demanded all my focus and attention. I needed the distraction. I needed the sense of control, the feeling that I could still create something beautiful and nourishing in a world that felt increasingly chaotic and unpredictable. One evening, I was making a particularly intricate dish, a slow braised lamb shank with rosemary and garlic, when Amelia wandered into the kitchen. I barely acknowledged her. I was too engrossed in my work, too focused on the delicate balance of flavors and textures. She stood there for a moment, silently watching me. Then she spoke. "That smells amazing," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I glanced up, surprised. It was the first unsolicited comment she'd made in weeks. "Thanks," I said, turning back to the lamb. "What is it?" she asked. "Lamb shank," I said. "Slow braised with rosemary and garlic. Can I try some?" I hesitated. I hadn't intended to share. It was my refuge, my creation, my escape. But then I looked at her face, at the raw vulnerability in her eyes, and I relented. "Sure," I said. "Give me a minute." I carefully plated a small portion of the lamb, along with some creamy polenta and roasted vegetables. I handed it to her. She took it with trembling hands. She took a bite. And then another. Her eyes widened. A faint flicker of something, recognition, pleasure, perhaps even hope, crossed her face. "This is incredible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. That was the turning point. That one small act of sharing, that one moment of connection, broke through the wall of grief that Amelia had built around herself. She started spending more time in the kitchen, watching me cook, asking questions. She even offered to help with the prep work, chopping vegetables, washing dishes, stirring sauces. It was awkward at first. We stumbled over each other, bumped into each other, made a few minor disasters. But slowly, gradually, we found a rhythm. We learned to work together. And as we worked, we talked. She told me about her marriage, about the dreams she'd had, about the pain she was feeling. I listened. I offered words of encouragement. I shared my own experiences with loss and disappointment. We discovered a shared love of food, a shared appreciation for the simple pleasures of life. We bonded over simmering sauces, over the aroma of freshly baked bread, over the comforting ritual of preparing a meal. The kitchen, once my refuge from her grief, became a space of healing, a space of connection, a space of shared humanity. But as Amelia blossomed, as she began to emerge from her shell, I noticed a subtle shift in Sarah, a flicker of resentment in her eyes, a tightness in her jaw, a withdrawal. She started spending less time in the kitchen. She stopped asking questions about the food I was making. She seemed distant. I tried to talk to her about it, but she just brushed it off. "I'm fine," she'd say, her voice flat. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. I could feel it. The tension was building again, simmering beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. One evening, I was cleaning up after dinner with Amelia when Sarah walked into the kitchen. She stood there, arms crossed, watching us. "Having fun?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "It just seems like you two are getting awfully cozy," she said. "Spending all your time together in the kitchen, cooking together, laughing together." I felt a jolt of anger. "Sarah, that's ridiculous," I said. "I'm just trying to help your sister." "Are you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or are you just enjoying the attention? Enjoying having someone who actually appreciates your cooking?" The words stung. They were laced with jealousy, with insecurity, with a pain that I didn't fully understand. I looked at Amelia, who was standing beside me, her face pale. "Sarah, please," Amelia said, her voice trembling. "Don't do this." "Don't do what?" Sarah snapped. "Don't point out the obvious? Don't call a spade a spade?" The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel the familiar walls closing in, the air growing thick and suffocating. The kitchen, once a sanctuary, once a place of healing, was now a battleground once more, and I was caught in the middle. "Sarah, you're being completely unfair," I said, my voice tight with anger. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just trying to be a good friend to your sister." "A good friend?" she scoffed. "Or something more?" "That's enough," I said, my voice rising. "You're out of line." "Am I?" she asked, her eyes flashing. "Am I really? Or am I just finally seeing things clearly?" I stepped closer to her, my anger boiling over. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," she said, her voice low and dangerous, "that I'm starting to wonder if you're really happy with me, if you're really satisfied with our life together." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. The insecurity, the jealousy, the pain, it all made sense now. She was afraid of losing me, afraid that I was drawn to Amelia's vulnerability, to her need for my attention. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I reached out and took Sarah's hands in mine. "Sarah, look at me," I said, my voice soft. "I love you. I love you more than anything in the world. I'm happy with you. I'm satisfied with our life together. Don't you know that?" She looked at me, her eyes searching my face. I could see the doubt, the fear, the uncertainty swirling within her. "But Amelia," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Amelia is your sister," I said. "She's hurting. She needs our help. That's all there is to it. There's nothing else going on here." I squeezed her hands, trying to convey the depth of my love and commitment. "Please, Sarah," I said. "Trust me." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes filled with tears. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I do," she said, her voice trembling. "I trust you. I'm just scared." I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "I know. I said. I'm scared too. The next few weeks were dedicated to rebuilding trust, to reaffirming our love, to reminding ourselves why we chose each other in the first place. We started spending more quality time together. We went for long walks in the park. We had dinner dates at our favorite restaurants. We watched movies on the couch, cuddling close. We talked. We really talked. We shared our fears, our insecurities, our hopes for the future. We listened to each other without judgment, without interruption. I made a conscious effort to include Sarah in my cooking. I taught her new recipes. I asked for her opinion on flavors and techniques. I made her feel like she was a part of the process. Slowly, gradually, the tension began to dissipate. The resentment faded. The love returned, stronger and more resilient than ever. And as our relationship healed, so did Amelia. She started going out more, meeting new people, exploring her interests. She even started dating again. She found a new job, a job that she loved, a job that gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She found her own apartment, a cozy little space that she decorated with her own unique style. She found her wings, and she flew. One evening, she came to our house for dinner. She was radiant, glowing with happiness and confidence. As we sat around the table, laughing and sharing stories, I looked at Sarah. She was smiling, her eyes filled with pride. I knew then that we had made it. We had weathered the storm. We had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever. The kitchen remains the heart of our home. It's a space of memories, of love, of connection. It's a space where I create, where I nourish, where I connect with the woman I love. It's a space where Amelia found her wings. It's a space that has seen its share of battles, its share of tears, its share of triumphs. But most of all, it's a space where we have learned to love each other, to trust each other, to support each other through thick and thin. And that's all that matters. The decorative plates are still gone. The ceramic hen remains a distant memory, but the love remains strong, resilient, everlasting. And in the end, that's all that really matters. The space we create for ourselves, the love we share, and the memories we make along the way. That's what makes a kitchen a home. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The kitchen hummed with activity, a symphony of sizzling pans and fragrant spices. Sarah thrived in her design work, her creativity blossoming. Amelia, independent and radiant, was a frequent visitor, a reminder of how far we'd all come. The scars remained, of course, faint lines etched into the landscape of our marriage, but they served as a reminder of the resilience of our bond, the depth of our love. Then came the phone call. Sarah's estranged Aunt Eleanor, a woman she hadn't seen in nearly 20 years, had passed away. Eleanor had been a recluse, a collector of eccentricities, and, apparently, a woman of considerable wealth. Sarah was named as the sole beneficiary of her estate. The news hit us like a tidal wave. We were stunned, overwhelmed, and, if I'm honest, a little apprehensive. Wealth has a way of changing people, of twisting values, of exposing hidden fault lines. I couldn't help but worry about what this unexpected windfall would do to us. The initial shock gave way to a flurry of legal paperwork, estate settlements, and logistical nightmares. Eleanor's house, a sprawling Victorian mansion on the other side of the state, was packed to the rafters with antiques, curiosities, and a lifetime's worth of accumulated possessions. Sarah felt a strange sense of obligation to sort through it all, to understand this woman who was both a stranger and a relative. I offered to go with her, to provide support and a steady hand. We packed our bags and embarked on a journey into the unknown, a journey into the heart of a life lived in solitude and secrets. Eleanor's mansion was a time capsule, a relic of a bygone era. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight that pierced through the grimy windows, illuminating layers of forgotten memories. The air was thick with the scent of decay, of old paper and moth-eaten fabric. Every room was crammed with furniture, tapestries, and artifacts, Porcelain dolls with vacant eyes stared down from dusty shelves. Portraits of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls, their gazes following us as we moved through the house. It was both fascinating and unsettling, a glimpse into a life frozen in time. Sarah was overwhelmed. She wandered from room to room, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and sadness. She picked up a faded photograph, a tarnished silver locket, a child's worn teddy bear, each object a fragment of a life she barely knew. I tried to offer comfort, to help her make sense of it all, but the weight of Eleanor's past was heavy, suffocating. We spent hours sifting through the chaos, trying to decipher the story of this enigmatic woman. Then we found the kitchen. Unlike the rest of the house, which was cluttered and chaotic, the kitchen was surprisingly sparse. It was a large, airy room with high ceilings and a massive brick hearth, but it was almost entirely empty. A single wooden table stood in the center of the room, surrounded by a few mismatched chairs. A rusty cast iron stove occupied one corner, its surface covered in a thick layer of grime. There were no utensils, no pots or pans, no sign that anyone had actually cooked in this kitchen in decades. Sarah stared at the room, her brow furrowed. "This is strange," she said. "Why would she keep the kitchen so empty?" I shrugged. "Maybe she didn't cook much," I said. "Maybe she preferred to eat out." But something felt off. The emptiness was too deliberate, too stark. It felt like a void, a deliberate absence. As I examined the room more closely, I noticed something peculiar. Faint outlines on the walls, almost imperceptible beneath the layers of dust and grime. They were the shapes of kitchen tools, of pots and pans, of utensils and appliances. It was as if someone had carefully removed everything from the kitchen, leaving behind only the ghosts of what had once been. A chill ran down my spine. It was a chillingly familiar scene, an echo of our own kitchen battle, a reminder of the destructive power of control and resentment. I started to clean the walls, carefully wiping away the dust and grime. As I did, the outlines became clearer, more defined. I could see the shape of a large butcher block, the outline of a rack filled with knives, the faint impression of a pot hanging above the stove. It was a chef's kitchen, a meticulously organized, well-equipped space designed for serious cooking. I called Sarah over. "Look at this," I said, pointing to the outlines on the wall. This wasn't just a kitchen. It was a passion. Sarah stared at the walls, her eyes widening in comprehension. "But why?" she asked. "Why would she remove everything?" The answer, I realized, was hidden in the one object that remained in the kitchen, the wooden table. It was a simple, unassuming table, but as I ran my hand across its surface, I felt something etched into the wood, faint, almost invisible to the naked eye. I took out my pocket knife and carefully scraped away the accumulated grime. And there, etched into the wood, were words. "He said I couldn't cook. He said I wasn't good enough." So I took it all away. The words were scrawled in a shaky, uneven hand, filled with bitterness and rage. Sarah gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. What happened? The story of Eleanor's kitchen unfolded before us, a tragic tale of a woman silenced by a controlling, critical partner. A man who had belittled her passion, dismissed her talent, and ultimately destroyed her love of cooking. In a fit of rage and despair, Eleanor had stripped the kitchen bare, removing every trace of her culinary life. She had vowed never to cook again, to deny herself the one thing that brought her joy. As we stood in that desolate kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of Eleanor's past, I saw a reflection of our own struggles. I saw the destructive power of control, the insidious nature of resentment, the devastating consequences of silencing someone's passion. I looked at Sarah, her face etched with sadness and understanding. She saw it too, the parallels between Eleanor's story and our own, the near miss, the averted disaster. We had been so close to repeating Eleanor's tragedy, to allowing our own insecurities and resentments to destroy our love. The revelation of Eleanor's secret changed everything. It gave us a new perspective on our own relationship, a deeper appreciation for the fragility of love and the importance of communication and trust. We spent the rest of our time at Eleanor's mansion sorting through her belongings, not with a sense of obligation, but with a sense of reverence. We tried to honor her memory, to understand her life, to learn from her mistakes. We decided to donate most of her possessions to local charities and museums. We kept a few small mementos, reminders of her story, lessons to be learned, and then we returned to our own kitchen, our own home, with a renewed sense of purpose. The first thing we did was clean. We scrubbed the counters, polished the appliances, and reorganized the cabinets. We filled the spice rack, restocked the pantry, and sharpened our knives. We wanted to create a space that was not just functional, but also inspiring, a place where we could both express our creativity and nourish our love. I cooked dinner that night, a simple meal of roasted chicken and vegetables, but it felt like a feast. We sat at the table, holding hands, our hearts filled with gratitude. We had learned from Eleanor's story. We had let go of the past. We had embraced the future. And we had rediscovered the power of love, the magic of connection, and the simple, everyday joy of sharing a meal in a kitchen filled with warmth, laughter, and the promise of a lifetime of happiness. A few months later, Sarah approached me with a proposition. "I've been thinking," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement, "about Eleanor's kitchen." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What about it?" "I want to restore it," she said. "I want to bring it back to life, not as a museum piece, but as a working kitchen, a place where people can come to learn, to cook, to share their love of food." I stared at her, stunned. It was a bold idea, a daunting task, but I knew in that moment that it was exactly what Eleanor would have wanted. "I'm in," I said, my heart swelling with love and admiration. "Let's do it." And so, we embarked on a new adventure, a new chapter in our lives. We began to renovate Eleanor's kitchen, transforming it from a desolate space of forgotten dreams into a vibrant center of culinary creativity. We hired local artisans to restore the original features of the kitchen, the brick hearth, the wooden floors, the high ceilings. We installed modern appliances, state-of-the-art equipment, and a collection of professional-grade cookware. We created a library of cookbooks, a spice rack filled with exotic flavors, and a garden overflowing with fresh herbs and vegetables. We called it Eleanor's Kitchen, a tribute to the woman who had inspired us to embrace our passions and to cherish our love. We offered cooking classes, demonstrations, and workshops for people of all ages and skill levels. We invited local chefs to share their expertise and to inspire others. We created a community of food lovers, a place where people could connect, learn, and share their love of cooking. Eleanor's Kitchen became a legacy, a testament to the transformative power of love and the enduring importance of following your dreams. And as I stood in that kitchen, watching Sarah teach a class of eager students, I knew that we had finally found our purpose. We had finally found a way to honor Eleanor's memory and to create a lasting impact on the world. The kitchen, once a source of conflict and resentment, had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of love, and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. And in that moment, I realized that the greatest recipe of all is not a dish made with ingredients, but a life lived with passion, purpose, and love. Years drifted by, painted with the warm hues of shared meals and blossoming dreams. Eleanor's Kitchen thrived, a bustling hub of culinary exploration and connection. Sarah's passion for design deepened, her talent gracing homes and businesses across the state. Amelia, ever the vibrant spirit, found love again and built a family of her own, the echoes of childish laughter often filling our home. As for me, I found myself not just a cook, but a teacher, a mentor, a storyteller, weaving tales of flavor and resilience for eager ears around the communal kitchen table. Life, as they say, was good, but life, in its unpredictable dance, always has another act waiting in the wings. This time, it came in the form of a tiny pink-cheeked revelation. Sarah was pregnant. The news crashed over us like a wave, a mixture of joy, terror, and utter disbelief. We were in our early 40s, settled in our ways, accustomed to our quiet evenings and shared passions. Parenthood felt like a distant shore, a journey we hadn't planned to take. Yet, as Sarah's belly swelled, a profound sense of anticipation filled our home. We prepared a nursery, painted in soft, soothing colors. I devoured parenting books, my mind swirling with lullabies and bedtime stories. We were, against all odds, ready to embark on this new adventure. The nursery was Sarah's domain. She carefully curated every detail, from the hand-painted mobile hanging above the crib to the plush rocking chair nestled in the corner. It was a haven of tranquility, a space filled with love and hope. But as the due date approached, I found myself drawn back to the kitchen. It was my sanctuary, my familiar ground, the place where I felt most grounded, most connected to myself and to Sarah. I began to prepare, not just the nursery, but the kitchen too. I stocked the pantry with healthy snacks, the freezer with homemade meals, the cookbook shelf with kid-friendly recipes. I envisioned myself teaching our child to cook, to explore the magic of flavors and textures, to find solace and creativity in the simple act of preparing a meal. I wanted them to grow up with a love of food, a respect for ingredients, and a deep appreciation for the power of sharing a meal with loved ones. Labor was long and arduous. Sarah's strength amazed me. As she gripped my hand, her face contorted in pain. She was a warrior. In between contractions, she squeezed my fingers so hard, I thought my hand would break. I whispered words of encouragement, wiped her brow, and reminded her of the beautiful reward that awaited us. Finally, after hours of pushing and straining, a cry pierced the air. A tiny, wriggling creature, covered in vernix and wonder, was placed in Sarah's arms. We named her Eleanor, a tribute to the woman who had taught us so much about love, resilience, and the importance of following our hearts. As I held Eleanor in my arms, a wave of emotion washed over me. I looked at Sarah, her face pale but radiant, and I knew that our lives had changed forever. In that moment, I made a promise to myself. I would be the best father I could be. I would teach Eleanor to cook, to laugh, to love, to dream. I would share my passions with her, support her dreams, and always be there to guide her along the way. And I knew with absolute certainty that our kitchen would be the heart of our family, the place where we would create memories that would last a lifetime. Eleanor grew quickly, a whirlwind of curiosity and energy. She crawled, she toddled, she explored. Soon, she was a constant presence in the kitchen, her tiny hands reaching for everything, her bright eyes filled with wonder. I let her explore. I gave her wooden spoons to bang on pots and pans. I let her taste the spices, smell the herbs, and feel the textures of different ingredients. She made a mess, of course. Flour covered the floor, tomato sauce stained her clothes, and sugar found its way into every nook and cranny. But I didn't mind. It was all part of the learning process. And besides, the mess was always worth it. The joy on Eleanor's face as she tasted her first bite of homemade pasta, the pride in her eyes as she helped me stir the soup, the laughter that filled the kitchen as we decorated cookies together, those were the moments that made it all worthwhile. One day, when Eleanor was about 4 years old, she asked me if she could bake a cake. "A whole cake?" I asked, surprised. "Yes," she said, her voice determined. "A big one." I hesitated. Baking a cake with a 4-year-old was a recipe for disaster, but I couldn't deny her the opportunity. "Okay," I said, "but you have to promise to follow my instructions." Eleanor nodded enthusiastically. We gathered the ingredients, measured the flour, cracked the eggs, and stirred the batter. Eleanor's concentration was impressive. She followed my instructions carefully, her tiny hands working with surprising precision. The cake baked beautifully, filling the kitchen with a warm, comforting aroma. We let it cool, frosted it with creamy vanilla icing, and decorated it with colorful sprinkles. It wasn't perfect, of course. The frosting was uneven, the sprinkles were scattered haphazardly, and the cake itself was slightly lopsided. But it was the most delicious cake I had ever tasted. We shared it with Sarah and Amelia, who praised Eleanor's baking skills and showered her with compliments. Eleanor beamed with pride. She had created something beautiful, something delicious, something that brought joy to everyone she loved. And in that moment, I knew that she had inherited my passion for cooking. As Eleanor grew older, her love of cooking deepened. She devoured cookbooks, experimented with new recipes, and even started creating her own dishes. She became a regular fixture at Eleanor's kitchen, helping Sarah teach cooking classes and assisting with catering events. She was a natural. She had a talent for flavor, a flair for presentation, and a genuine passion for sharing her love of food with others. I watched her blossom, my heart filled with pride and gratitude. I had passed on my love of cooking to the next generation, and I knew that she would carry on the legacy of Eleanor's kitchen for years to come. One evening, as we were cleaning up after a particularly busy day at the kitchen, Eleanor turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "Dad," she said, "I have an idea." "What is it?" I asked, intrigued. "I want to open my own restaurant," she said. "A place where I can showcase my own recipes and create my own culinary experiences." I smiled. It was a bold dream, a challenging endeavor, but I knew that she had the talent, the passion, and the determination to make it happen. "I believe in you," I said. "I'll help you in any way I can." And so the cycle continued. I would help her chase her dream, give her guidance, and support her path. With Sarah's hand in mine, and all the love around us, I knew Eleanor would be able to achieve anything she put her mind to. Years later, as I sat in Eleanor's restaurant, savoring a dish she had created herself, I felt a sense of profound satisfaction. The restaurant was a success. It was filled with happy customers, eager to taste Eleanor's culinary creations. Eleanor was thriving. She was a talented chef, a successful entrepreneur, and a loving mother to her own children. As I looked around the room, I saw a reflection of our past, a testament to our resilience, and a celebration of our love. The kitchen, once a source of conflict and resentment, had become a symbol of hope, a beacon of love, and a legacy that would endure for generations to come. And in that moment, I knew that we had finally come full circle. Our story, which had begun in a kitchen filled with tension and uncertainty, had ended in a kitchen filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. Eleanor's restaurant, The Hearth, quickly became a culinary sensation. Her innovative dishes, blending tradition with modern flair, garnered rave reviews. Awards followed, and reservations were booked months in advance. She was a force to be reckoned with, a rising star in the culinary world. But success came at a cost. The long hours, the relentless pressure to maintain quality, the constant need to innovate, all took their toll. She was exhausted, stressed, and increasingly irritable. I watched her, my heart aching with concern. She was burning the candle at both ends, sacrificing her health and happiness for the sake of her ambition. I tried to talk to her, to offer advice, to remind her that there was more to life than work. But she brushed me off, dismissing my concerns as outdated and out of touch. "Dad, you don't understand," she said, her voice sharp. "This is my dream. I have to do this." I knew she was right. It was her dream. But I also knew that she was pushing herself too hard, neglecting her personal life and isolating herself from those who loved her most. Her relationship with her boyfriend, Liam, a kind and supportive architect, began to fray. They had less and less time for each other, their conversations reduced to rushed phone calls and strained silences. "Sarah, Ever the observant mother noticed the strain. She tried to mediate, to encourage Eleanor to slow down and prioritize her relationship. But Eleanor wouldn't listen. "Mom, I have to focus on my restaurant right now," she said. "Liam will understand." But Liam didn't understand. He felt neglected, unappreciated, and increasingly distant. One evening, Liam came to our house, his face etched with sadness. "I can't do this anymore," he said, his voice trembling. "I love Eleanor, but I can't keep living like this. She's always working, always stressed, always unavailable. I need more than that." Sarah and I exchanged a worried glance. We knew that this was coming, but it still hurt to see Eleanor's relationship crumble before our eyes. As Eleanor's life spiraled, I began to question my own role as a father. Had I pushed her too hard? Had I instilled in her a relentless drive for success that overshadowed her personal happiness? I thought back to my own life, to the sacrifices I had made to pursue my passion for cooking. Had I inadvertently taught her that work should always come first? I started to see things differently. I realized that success wasn't just about achieving professional goals, but also about nurturing relationships, finding balance, and prioritizing well-being. I wanted Eleanor to have it all. I wanted her to be successful in her career, but I also wanted her to find love, happiness, and fulfillment in her personal life. I knew that I couldn't force her to change, but I could offer her my support, my understanding, and my unwavering love. One evening, I found Eleanor in the kitchen at the hearth, working late, her face pale and drawn. I sat down beside her, my heart heavy with concern. "Eleanor," I said, my voice soft. "Can we talk?" She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Dad, I don't have time for this," she said. "I have a million things to do, I know," I said. "But this is important." I took her hand in mine, my gaze unwavering. "Eleanor, I'm worried about you," I said. "You're working too hard. You're neglecting your health, your relationships, your happiness." She pulled her hand away, her eyes flashing with anger. "Dad, you don't understand," she said. "This is my life. This is what I want." "I know," I said, "but I don't want you to sacrifice everything for the sake of your career. I want you to be happy." "I am happy," she said, her voice defiant. "Are you?" I asked, my voice gentle. "Really? Or are you just pretending?" She looked away, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know," she whispered. I reached out and hugged her, holding her close. "Eleanor, I love you," I said. "I just want you to be okay." We sat there in silence for a few minutes, the weight of her struggles hanging heavy in the air. Finally, she spoke. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, "I don't know what to do." "It's okay," I said. "We'll figure it out together." The conversation with Eleanor was a turning point. She finally admitted that she was struggling, that she needed help, that she was tired of sacrificing her happiness for the sake of her ambition. She started to make changes. She hired a sous chef to take some of the pressure off her. She delegated more tasks to her staff. She started taking time for herself, for exercise, for relaxation. She also started to reconnect with Liam. They talked, they listened, they shared their feelings. They realized that their love was still strong, but that they needed to make a conscious effort to prioritize their relationship. They started going on dates again, taking weekend trips, and spending quality time together. Slowly, gradually, Eleanor found her balance. She learned to manage her career without sacrificing her personal life. She learned to prioritize her health and happiness. She realized that success wasn't just about achieving professional goals, but also about nurturing relationships, finding joy in the everyday, and living a life filled with purpose and meaning. As I watched her thrive, my heart swelled with pride. She had learned a valuable lesson, a lesson that I had tried to teach her for years, and I realized that my role as a father wasn't just about supporting her dreams, but also about guiding her, challenging her, and helping her to become the best version of herself. Seeing Eleanor struggle and ultimately find her balance wasn't just a pivotal moment for her, It served as a mirror reflecting back on Sarah and my own journey. It reignited conversations about our priorities, our shared goals, and the ever-evolving nature of love and partnership. One evening, after Eleanor had left for a date with Liam, Sarah and I found ourselves sitting in the quiet of our living room, a familiar comfort settling around us. Watching Eleanor navigate all of this. "It's been a lot, hasn't it?" Sarah said, her voice thoughtful. I nodded, taking her hand. "It has! It's made me realize how easily we can lose sight of what truly matters." "Remember our kitchen fight?" Sarah asked, a slight smile playing on her lips. "It feels like a lifetime ago, but sometimes I still think about how close we came to losing everything." "Me too," I admitted. And seeing Eleanor almost fall into the same trap, it was a stark reminder. We talked for hours that night, revisiting our past struggles, acknowledging our mistakes, and reaffirming our commitment to each other. We spoke about the importance of communication, of compromise, and of always prioritizing our relationship, even amidst the chaos of life. Sarah confessed that she had sometimes felt overshadowed by my passion for cooking, that she had struggled to find her own voice amidst my strong personality. I listened, truly listened, to her words, recognizing the validity of her feelings. I realized that I had often been so focused on my own pursuits that I had neglected to fully appreciate her talents and her contributions to our lives. "I want to be more involved in Eleanor's kitchen," Sarah said, her eyes shining with determination. "Not just as a supporter, but as a partner. I want to use my design skills to create a more inviting space, to help with the marketing, to contribute in a meaningful way." I smiled, my heart swelling with love and admiration. It was exactly what I had hoped for. "I would love that," I said. "We're a team, Sarah. Always have been, always will be." In the following months, Sarah became an integral part of Eleanor's kitchen. She redesigned the interior, creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere that perfectly complemented Eleanor's culinary creations. She revamped the website, created stunning marketing materials, and organized successful promotional events. Her design expertise breathed new life into the restaurant, attracting a wider audience and enhancing the overall dining experience. Seeing Sarah thrive, seeing her passion ignite, filled me with immense joy. It was a reminder that love wasn't just about romantic gestures and shared experiences, but also about supporting each other's dreams and celebrating each other's successes. As Eleanor's restaurant continued to flourish, Sarah and I found ourselves entering a new chapter of our lives. We were grandparents now, delighting in the laughter and boundless energy of Eleanor's children. Our kitchen at home, while still my domain, had become a collaborative space, a place where generations came together to share meals, create memories, and pass on traditions. One sunny afternoon, as I watched Eleanor teaching her eldest child how to roll out dough, a profound sense of peace settled over me. I realized that we had come full circle. The kitchen, once a battleground, had become a sanctuary, a symbol of love and a legacy that would endure for generations to come. I thought back to all the challenges we had faced, the struggles we had overcome, and the lessons we had learned. The kitchen fight, Eleanor's near burnout, Aunt Eleanor's tragic story, all of it had shaped us, molded us, and ultimately brought us closer together. I looked at Sarah, her face radiant with joy, as she watched her daughter and granddaughter bond over a simple act of cooking. I knew that we had built something truly special, something that would last a lifetime. The kitchen wasn't just a room in our house. It was the heart of our home, the place where we had laughed, cried, celebrated, and mourned. It was the place where we had learned to love, to trust, and to forgive. And as I stood there, surrounded by the warmth of the oven, the aroma of freshly baked bread, and the love of my family, I knew that I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Our story, which had begun in a kitchen filled with tension and uncertainty, had ended in a kitchen filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a future filled with even more memories to create, even more lessons to learn, and even more love to share. The kitchen, in all its imperfect glory, had been the making of us all, and for that, I would be forever grateful.